Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Laura Sparks, president of the Cooper Union. We are so delighted to be hosting this evening's event as part of our ongoing series of Public Art Fund talks at the Cooper Union. These conversations are organized around current city exhibitions like the one you'll hear about shortly. Exhibitions that connect compelling artwork to a wide public audience. If this is your first time joining us, the Cooper Union is among the nation's leading institutions for students pursuing degrees in architecture, art, and engineering. Cooper was founded on a belief that fair access to education for all is instrumental to a healthy society. And for over a century and a half, we have educated generations of influential creative practitioners who have engaged the public spaces of New York City as sites of experimentation, expression, and civic dialogue. Cooper Union shares with Public Art Fund a longstanding commitment to democratizing access to culture and learning for every New Yorker. And I want to thank them for partnering with us to make programs like this possible. Tonight's conversation is particularly special to us because we are joined by a celebrated artist who I'm proud to say is a graduate of the Cooper Union. I've been lucky to get to know him on a personal level over the past few years, and I'm so thankful for his generosity and the time and the energy that he shares with our school. Awol Erizku is a multidisciplinary artist working in photography, film, sculpture, and installation, and a 2010 graduate of the Cooper Union School of Art. He creates work that bridges the gap between African and African American visual culture. His artistry, which references art history, hip hop, and spirituality, also extends to his commercial photography, where he has produced portraits of cultural and creative leaders from Beyonce to American poet Amanda Gorman to actor Michael B. Jordan. His latest exhibition, New Visions for Iris, opened earlier this winter for Public Art Fund and is on view through June 20th. It is his first solo public exhibition and features a new body of 13 photographs displayed at 350 different bus shelters across New York City's 5 boroughs and throughout Chicago. The photographs were produced during this past tumultuous year and are inspired by the recent birth of Awol's daughter, Iris, offering a starting point for future dialogue with her about identity and our challenging times. This exhibition is really a shining example of the ability of images to speak to us and to connect us to the life of the city in these extraordinary times. We are so deeply honored to have Awol with us tonight. Joining him to moderate this evening's discussion will be the curator of New Visions for Iris, Daniel S. Palmer. As Public Art Fund curator, Daniel Palmer has organized more than a dozen exhibitions. Prior to that, he was the Leon Levy Assistant Curator at the Jewish Museum. He's also curated numerous exhibitions independently and has written for Art News, the New York Times, the Brooklyn Rail, and Guernica, among others. We also have a special guest joining us a little later on, Kingdawud Burgess, who is the subject of 3 of the photographs in New Visions for Iris. It is my pleasure to welcome all of our guests tonight. Awol and Daniel, it is wonderful to have you both with us. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for that warm intro, Laura.
Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you, Awol. Thank you to the audience, everyone for joining us. We're so grateful to be here hosted by Cooper Union. And this is a very important talk for us tonight on the occasion of Awol Erizku, New Visions for Iris, which, as Laura said, has been open since February. And we're so excited to be, sharing this important work, this solo exhibition of 13 new photographs on 300 JCDecaux bus shelters throughout New York City and throughout Chicago. Really excited for tonight's talk. There's a bit of housekeeping just to take care of first, which is to say, that Public Art Fund talks, which we organize in collaboration with Cooper Union. Our goal really for these talks like tonight's is to connect compelling contemporary artists with a broad public by establishing a dialogue around artistic practices and public art. And, really at Public Art Fund, our core values of expression and democratic access to culture and learning, these are our values shared by both Public Art Fund and Cooper Union. And this is really embodied by this ongoing collaboration. So tonight we're going to have a 30-minute or so conversation between Awol and myself. And we're very excited to welcome our special guest, Kingdawud Burgess, to join us as well. We plan on taking questions from the audience, so chime into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen if you've got anything you'd like to ask. And also important to state that we have closed captioning available for tonight's event. So if you are interested in closed captioning, there's also a button at the bottom of your Zoom screen that you can incorporate. So Public Art Fund is physically based in Manhattan. We'd like to begin tonight's talk by offering our respect and gratitude to the Lenape people and acknowledge that our offices stand on their ancestral homeland in Lenapehoking, excuse me. I want to also take this opportunity to thank the donors who generously support our talks program, including Con Edison, New York State Council on the Arts, and New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and of course, Public Art Fund's incredible board. We're so grateful for your ongoing support for this free public program. Specifically for New Visions for Iris, we had an incredible group of donors whose generosity helped make the exhibition possible, including our presenting sponsor, Bloomberg Philanthropies, Elise and Andrew Brownstein, Ellen and Andrew Chelly, Amanda and Glenn Furman, Holly and Jonathan Lipton, Jennifer and Jason New, Douglas M. Polly, Patricia and Howard Silverstein, and the William Talbot Hillman Foundation, Victoria Rogers, and of course, our incredible partners at JCDecaux. Finally, we have a group of guests joining us tonight from Freeze. This event, tonight's event, was organized as part of a series of initiatives that are comprising a tribute to the Vision and Justice Project and Sarah Elizabeth Lewis, who's the associate professor at Harvard University and was organized by Freeze New York. The Vision and Justice Project is dedicated to examining art's central role in understanding the relationship between race and citizenship in the United States. And we are pleased to be actively involved in this conversation through tonight's event. For more information about Vision and Justice, you can find that available online at visionandjustice.org. Okay. Awol, sorry, that was a lot, but so many people are obviously, supporting you and supporting the great work we do. And, I'm just so excited about tonight's event. We've been working, on this project together for years now. I remember we first met in 2016 or so, I believe it was, to talk about hoping to create a moment like this, hoping to create an opportunity to share your work with the city of New York, and who knew we'd get to share it even beyond the city of New York as well, with New Visions for Iris. I'm so proud of you for this project, and it really is an immense honor of my career and of my life to collaborate with you on this exhibition and to have such a deep and meaningful dialogue around the show. So let's get into it. We've got installation photographs from the project and detailed images from the works you made for New Visions for Iris that I'm so excited we can share. And if Miranda could pull those slides up, we can get into it. So let's start with something pretty fundamental. What does the exhibition New Visions for Iris mean to you? What were you trying to accomplish? And we're seeing here an image, Arrival, that's a very just powerful, striking image. I would love to hear more from you on this.
Yeah, Daniel, thank you so much. And it is mutually an honor to have been curated by you for this show and for this exhibition, and to also kind of simmer most of the conversations that we've been having in the past couple of years to this beautiful exhibition. And so for me, this exhibition is, I guess, in large part, a culmination of, images that I made during lockdown. It's also the year that I became a father, so I think a lot of that played into it, obviously with the title. And it is, images made from some thoughts and some troubling concerns that I've been thinking about that year. So I think it was my way of making these psychological portraits in a way. And it's also something that's going to serve as a footnote for this tumultuous year. And a lot of these images, I hope will one day sort of spark the conversation between me and Iris about, the world that she's coming into.
That's so great. As we go to some of the next images, would you be able to sort of speak more about the optimistic gesture that you just mentioned of the title? What made you keen to have these future conversations, on very significant subjects with your daughter, and how did the range of works that you incorporated into the show? You have images that are still lives like this. You have others that we'll get to that are more portrait based and are addressing really a wide range of subjects. Sort of what was the sort of guiding aspect of your approach?
Man, I mean, it's so many. Like I said, there's so many things that, I guess the moment that I became a father, or like knew that I was becoming a father, there's a lot of concerns that I could not sort of address, right? And that ultimately led me to begin thinking of ways to address them in a way that wasn't too direct or too didactic, but it still had this sort of I guess like a poetic diction by way of visual imagery. So I was using the lens as like a poetic device. And that crosses into thinking about cross-cultural perspectives, which I think something that's important, that's going to be important for Iris, being that she comes from like a mixed family. And for me, thinking about sort of historical interventions, how history could be forged and or created, and how to also reclaim one's own history. So these things are very important to me, and I hope will be important to my daughter as well.
The next slide, I think the next slide shows that quite nicely.
Yeah.
This image, 13 Months of Sunshine, I think speaks to some of the sort of global dimensions of the work, and specifically, the next images as well. I believe Pharaoh Whispers we have an image of next, as well as the next, maybe we'll pause on the next image, 632, sure, and sort of talk a little bit about this. I mean, it's very clear that you were really able to sort of reflect on this, and think about your role as a father, the way the world had been changing during pandemic and whatnot. But beyond that, you're clearly thinking a lot about advertising space and, the way that these works were going to manifest, throughout the world. What sort of drove a bit of kind of how you approached thinking about the symbolism and, specifically a cake like this in the outline of Africa, the sort of and flowers and maybe to address the range of this works as well in terms of how you approach still life, but thinking about public space at the same time.
Yeah, so I think going back to the last question, I think it's sort of important to understand the way that I approach image making. So it was important to me that this body of work wasn't something that was created out of seriality, right? Like something that felt like there was 10 of these or there's 13 of these, right? And each image had to represent something different, had to have a different conceptual sort of grounding. So with that in mind, with this particular image, I'd been thinking about how, the Pan-African flag has been sort of used in the last couple of years. And it just felt very, I don't know, it was partly intuitive, partly had a lot to do with the way that I saw the flag being sort of merchandised in a lot of ways. And then, so, again, the flag has, many layers, much like cake. But then also the numbers, 632, was the year that the Prophet had passed, and it was also the same year, coincidentally, when Islam was 632 BC, by the way, that Islam was introduced to Africa. So, there's all these layers, and there's all these, again, like these thoughts that I have, and it comes a point where they kind of have to converge. And so for me, this image was that point. So I've been working on this image for about, I would say, maybe a week. And then, I've been making all these revisions on it. And because we're in lockdown, a lot of the labs are also, a lot of them are also closed. And, it just took me forever to get my film process and sort of look at what I had. And by that point, I think by the time I made the last image, the 6 had kind of fell into like the hole. And then I was just looking at 32, which is my current age. And I was like, you know what, this is a good place to stop. Again, going back to, I guess technically Iris was born when I was 31, but it was just like a right amount of, serendipity and, just processing, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think that, something I'll say about our dialogue around this exhibition was, we both, just with pandemic and with everything, but especially you really rolled with the punches, and I think that there's an inevitable, there are inevitably hiccups and challenges that manifest in life, but especially in exhibition making, and especially, in sharing art, especially in public space. But I really think that there was such a willingness and a brilliance on your part to sort of see what doors were open and to make the best of it. And this maybe is a reasonable moment to talk about how the exhibition changed from your initial conception of it. And maybe how some of your, original hopes of what you were intending to do, needed to be adjusted, but where we got to a really, beautiful place with images like this, with the next image that we can see, that came into the mixture, but especially with the image after this one as well. Let's see if we can pull that up. Yeah, CDCR, I think to discuss, how these challenges, the conditions of the pandemic, of making work during the pandemic, of being able to share, create and share this exhibition, during this past year, how it sort of evolved for you in terms of that process.
Yeah. So this particular image was made peak pandemic, right, when everything was like shut down, and it was just me, these objects that you and I had both kind of collected from the original conceptual framework that we had for the exhibition, which was to go to prisons and document particularly Black Muslim men who were converting during their time serving prison. And I guess we talked to a lot of chaplains and imams, and I guess we got to a point where we were about to make our first visit when things started shutting down. And as a sort of pivot, we started collecting some of these objects that some of the imams would tell us about, right? Like some of the Qurans that they were reading, like specifically how some of the prayer beads were only limited to having 10 beads because they didn't want it to be weaponized. The sort of shoes that they had to wear, and then so I mixed in a lot of that with some parables from the Quran, and some ideas that I've been mulling over, like the parables of the spider, and sort of kind of came up with this I guess assemblage of an image. And yeah, so I mean, and I know when Dawood comes in, he's going to sort of fill us in on the other aspect of it, but I think it was just my way of translating some of that conversation that we'd been having with those gentlemen. And yeah, I think this was like one of those manifestations.
Absolutely. I just want to remind everyone that we have a question and answer, towards the end of this talk, and there's a Q&A box below in the center of your Zoom chat. If you want to add some comments or questions, feel free to add those there. And let's advance the slide to talk about this deeply moving portrait of Michael Brown Sr. Well, I think, you know, this meditative, sort of sensitive portrait really is emblematic of your sensitivity and thoughtfulness in terms of approaching this entire project in many of the ways you were just describing. Maybe you can speak a little bit to this image as well, sort of as it was a sort of manifestation of the evolved thinking and approach that you were just describing, you know, maybe adding in, you know, because obviously for all of us, you know, this past moment, the moment that you were making the show, you know, COVID and, you know, the movement for social justice and Black Lives Matters protests and everything going on in the country and in the world really had an enormous impact on our thinking and our existence. You know, do you want to speak a little bit to how the social change of this moment, you know, influence your thoughts on creating work and sharing it as well in this context?
Yeah, I mean, you know, honestly, like, well, this particular image was actually made during a GQ commission, and again, a very serendipitous moment where the light, you know, that should have went off didn't, and I guess the natural light that was there was the only thing illuminating his body, and I just loved how he just looks like he's coming out of the shadow, which again, based on some of the conversations that I've had with him, just seems very emblematic, and also just for me, just captivated a lot of things that I've been thinking about on that trip. And you know, to address the work and how the sort of this moment shifted my work, I think I became less and less interested in portraiture in a very direct way. And, you know, that's when I started doing the Ramadan drawings. I guess I've been doing them a year prior, but again, like all of that was like leading into that moment of not really, you know, trying to use the Black body in my work as much anymore. Or yeah, I just, you know, it's not that I'm running away from it, but I think I realize how commodified it can be, and I realize how easy it can also be for me to make an image that could quickly be commodified and devoured. And so, you know, that was this, you know, awareness that I had in my practice, where I'd said, you know what, I need to find ways to engage with, you know, my subjects, or sort of some of these concepts that I have, but not use the body in a very direct way.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's very meaningful as well, because obviously, you know, this portrait is a meditation on fatherhood as well, you know, and it's very different, you know, moments of fatherhood that you're talking about with your, you know, newborn daughter Iris, and that, you know, Michael Brown Sr. You know, painfully lost his son, but I think it feels, from my perspective, at least when I first saw this image, that this is about, you know, a portrait of connection and a portrait of, you know, of finding a type of empathy, you know, not just for you and your subject, but also for all of us, hopefully, who are viewers of this piece as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is the other sort of bittersweet moment about that whole trip, was like I was, you know, meeting a lot of the fathers who had just lost their son, and they were at a different grievance sort of points, and you know that was troubling, because you know, here I am as a new father, and you know, a lot of these men had just lost their, you know, sons, and you know, I can't even put it into words, because it's you could feel their pain once you have somebody that you could lose in that sort of way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it definitely informed like the way that I was approaching that, I guess, that series of images. But yeah, especially with Michael Brown Sr., like, you know, we just had a very great connection. Like, they were very warm, welcoming, much like everybody else. But you know, somebody that was on his team who happened to be from NOI was very like sort of welcoming. And you know, when I told him that what I was doing, he was just like, I don't know, just open, you know, embraced me with open arms. And yeah, it was just such a special sort of session that we had.
That's so beautiful, and I think it really speaks not only to your commitment and intention of sharing these types of works in public space and about a lot of what that means, but especially the new visions part of it, the new visions for Iris part, of as you've sort of put it so eloquently before, of really sharing these conversations, or prompts. That's the word you've used, that these are prompts for conversations, not only, between you and your daughter, but between the public, the audiences who are seeing these works.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like, maybe this is actually the perfect moment to introduce our partner in this discussion tonight, because I think a lot of what you're doing in the portraits that you were just describing, is related to thinking about how to represent an individual in public space, and how to really change the narrative about who is represented on bus shelter platforms like this, and in an important way. So let me first read Kingdawud Burgess's introduction. So a bio, we have a short little bio for him, which is Kingdawud Burgess is a published author, a poet, a philanthropist, a motivational speaker, and in his own words, a legend. And I can completely agree with that. Yeah. I'll also add that for more information, he's going to be speaking, for more information about his many books, the many books that he's authored, and about his music and so many of the other things he does so brilliantly. You can check out his Instagram or Facebook under the name Kingdawud Burgess. That's all one word. And you can also purchase his books there too and support him in that way. So let's go to the next slide. We have a brief little intro video. Awol, do you want to speak about the intro video, or we just play it?
Let us do his thing.
Great, beautiful.
It's an old saying. A wise man learned everything he know from a fool, because he used to be that fool. A chess match is the ultimate battle in one's mind. You're sitting there and you're trying to out-strategize the next man. Sort of like life. But in life, you're constantly battling yourself. So every day, we're constantly playing a chess match against ourselves. In the Quran, Allah tells people, stand out against injustice, even if it's against yourself. So now, before I make that chess move, I'm gonna think about it 100 times, because that one move can set me back the rest of my life.
That video was by Adrian Phillips, by the way.
Wonderful, thank you. Dawood, it's so good to see you. Let's unmute you. Perfect. I thought it was really so special to bring in Dawood and to have Awol in conversation with Dawood, to have the photographer in conversation with the subject, but obviously your dialogue is so much more than that even. Dawood, I would love to chat with you and hear about how you and Awol came to meet, and to start to speak about this collaboration, which feels like such an organic version of portraiture, really in terms of a dialogue between a subject and an artist.
So thank you for the introduction. And then thank you for this platform as well. Thank your whole team. And thank you for all the donors as well. Thank you, Awol, for allowing me to be a part of this exhibit. So me and Awol, he has a different story on how we met. So my story on how we met is I seen him, we spoke, but in the masjid, you have thousands of people praying. So, you're not really paying attention to one person in particular, but he stood out. And I never really knew why, but he stood out. So our conversations were a little longer than just the greeting. I never knew his name because I didn't ask. So one day he sends me a message on Instagram and he's like, I want to work with you on some stuff. So I'm reading this and I'm like, I'm thinking it's a scam, because I'm like, this person, like, I never knew what he'd done. Like, that's one thing about Islam that's so pure, right? So you could be the president, you could be the billionaire, you could be whoever. Everybody comes into that space normal. You don't know who they are. They all look the same. Everybody's kneeling down praying. we don't see the president, we don't see the billionaire, we just see normal people trying to worship God. So I never knew what he done. So when he told me what he done, he told me what he was trying to do with me, I was in disbelief. So I started trying to investigate him. And for a while, I was not convinced until he sent his manager to give me a call. So I was asking people like, man, I don't know what's up with this. This is not real. So a guy was like, yo, you know who this is? And I'm like, nah, who is this? He like, man, this is one of the greatest artists in the history of mankind. And I'm like, so maybe I should take this serious. So I went and met with him. He told me his vision for Iris, and he told me many other visions that he had just for the images. And a lot of the stuff just happened to come together as we were shooting. And he began to like, you know, art is not something that you can sculpt or you can speak it into existence. It just has to happen. Like when the sun rises, it's just going to happen. You never know what the sun rays are going to land on. It's going to be beautified. That's art. So he did his art exhibit, and it came out wonderful. And that's how we met. That's how the ideas are still coming together with the exhibit, because people take from art whatever they interpret it to be. Like I think I had told you guys when we was actually doing the photo shoot, Adrian, he had went to pull away from me. He wanted to get a farther view, and a group of school kids was walking by, like it was a group of them, and they was with this lady, and the kid stopped and he seen me standing there, and he was like, oh, that's you. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. He was like, yo, guys, look, this is him. And they was like, whoa, that's you. And they were so excited. And at that moment, I had looked across the street, and I seen a bunch of guys just hanging out, drinking, smoking. They looked like they was living reckless. And my first thought was, that's why I used to be. And that was the beauty in it, because you can have a child who don't know me, is so proud of something I accomplished, but he don't know that I used to be the guy that he would never end up wanting to be.
That's beautiful. Miranda, can we bring in the image of Zur, just to start to make sure that people have the context for these specific images that Dawood, so yeah, the next slide there. Dawood, that's such a great sort of introduction to your experience of first of all, the process of Awol, you know, capturing these powerful images, but also then being able to share them. And maybe Awol and Dawood, I would love to sort of talk a little bit about what this image specifically, Zur, which is such a powerful one, you know, what it specifically means to emphasize the spiritual aspect, you know, of Islam in a public space, in a trying time, a really, you know, intense time for everyone in the cities that it's exhibited, and for us all in life. Let's sort of address that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for me, Daniel, one of the things that we've talked about was how I was interested in using this public sort of platform and making these images with the intention of having an accidental read, meaning I didn't necessarily want anybody to walk past this, look at a man praying and say, oh, that's a Muslim man praying. The sort of peculiarity of having certain objects in the images was very important. Around the time we made this, I guess this has been what, Dawood, it was a little bit after Kobe had passed. And mind you, like LA, like it was a huge thing, you know, so it was only right. And Kobe was one of my idols in a way. And it just felt right to memorialize him in that way as well. The Falcon, of course, is a symbol of you know, regalness. And the way that I also saw Dawood and his sort of devotion to his faith, and which was something that really factored into us, you know, becoming closer, you know, as friends. So, you know, I mean, that's one aspect of it. There's other ways of you know, kind of dissecting this image, but again, I wanted people who are going to come across this in their own neighborhood, say, like, you know, in the Bronx where I'm from, and not just look at a man praying, but, you know, this man who's also he could be from that neighborhood. You know what I mean? And it also opens up a lot of doors for, you know, multiple readings, and that to me was important. So yeah, without like sort of demystifying, I guess the process, like I'll leave it there, and then if Dawood wants to chime in.
So, you know, you have a book with a bunch of photos and letters that people left from all over the world to Kobe. You know, they came here from everywhere and they left letters, they left flowers, candles, even jerseys. But what we didn't see is somebody actually offering prayer for him.
Mm.
And that's like, for us, that's ultimate, because you go on to the Creator and you're asking him like to give this man eternal bliss, give him peace forever. And that's an honor that many never thought to give him. You know, it was okay to leave a letter, which is, I'm not taking nothing away from that, or the flowers, but it's like the prayer in which everybody can see. Then it reminds them like, whoa, I never even prayed for this guy. Like I never even tried to reach out beyond this life and talk to somebody on his behalf. So that was super powerful, that I was given the honor to do that. And it happened like right after you had Mick Mills, who's a rapper. He made a comment about Kobe that his wife didn't like at all. So I was like, this is the brother cleaning it up. He's like, we don't just think of him that way, you know, we think of him even deeper, more sincere. So it was amazing that I was given the honor to do this. And also, one of the areas where me and Adrian went to film the footage, it's sort of a bad neighborhood, you know. And when I walked in there, I could see myself from a block away praying, and it just calmed me down. Naturally, I was, you know, you're sort of nervous. Whenever you go into any ghetto housing, like you're dealing with people who are, they suffering from poverty, most of their lives have been very hard. So they get to the point where they no longer care about things. So when you get in the presence of people who don't care, or they feel like they have nothing to lose, you can be in danger. So we had to go into this environment to get this footage, and the people was looking at me like I was trespassing. And you have a lot of those guys, they have enemies. They have people who don't like them too well for whatever life they've been living. And they have to watch me to make sure I'm not no harm to them. And I noticed like it was the police on every corner. In some of the footage, you'll see that the police is there. So you got a heavy police presence trying to protect or either arrest or whatever they're doing there. Then you got a multitude of guys who are up to no good. And, you know, it's an intimidating situation. So when we went in there and I seen this, like I was calm the whole time. And when I actually got there, it's like the guys never even paid attention to that being there until they seen me there. They was looking at me more than they was looking at the image. And then when they seen what we was doing, they started congratulating me like, man, that's amazing, man. That's amazing. And then I just had conversations with them like, I used to be where y'all at. Not disrespecting them, but just telling them like, I used to be there. And then I became more conscious, like the life you live in is going to lead you nowhere. Like you can be on Billboard too. You could do everything that I've done. Like I've traveled that path and it doesn't really lead to anything glorious, you know? So we had a great conversation, and, you know, I got the crowd to listen, and people was happy about this. They wasn't mad. I guess whenever you see a man praying, how can you be mad? Wouldn't you feel safe? Like no matter what, let's say if you went into a dark alley, you would be fearful, but then when you walk there, you seen people praying, like you'll probably get at ease, like, oh, I'm okay right here.
That's so beautiful. If we can advance to the next image, I believe it's Revelations, and talk specifically about that aspect, Dawood, that you were just describing, which I think, Awol, you've also described in the video we did for the exhibition, the power of seeing someone like Dawood in public space, of seeing, Muslim man praying, in, post 9/11 New York City. I mean, obviously, we're 20 years away from that, but I do think that it's a really powerful gesture to see, public advertising space sort of, let's call it co-opted, reclaimed, given as a platform to an artist who then, uses that platform to make such a powerful gesture. Do you want to speak a little bit about that? What has it meant to you to do that? And Dawood, what has it meant to you to be the person who's shown in that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was in junior high school when 9/11 happened, and yeah, I think I was in junior high school. But I also went to Art and Design High School on 57th and 2nd, or at least when it used to be there. And I just remember seeing the sort of chaos, that 9/11 brought onto the city. And I remember how dangerous it was for people, not only who were just Muslims, but people who might slightly resemble people that look Muslim, right? So that means the Sikh community was getting attacked. So a lot of these, bodegas and sort of newsstands that you would see, I guess you saw them a lot more, a decade ago, whatever. And they're getting tarnished left and right, and so for me, and on a personal level, it prevented me and my sisters from going to masjid. We used to go to Quran school, and that definitely sort of stopped because of it. So it had a lot of adverse effects on the Muslim community. And so for me to come back and sort of have this opportunity to make this image and to make this not necessarily trying to be disruptive, but to see where we're at, right? And I think based on some of the images that we've been sharing privately during this exhibition of my friend Akili, who sent me these images of actually Dawood, and I think it was like the park match, and maybe the Revelations also kind of destroyed. I find that interesting, because I don't think, I mean, there were some that were just people stealing the images, but then there were some that was just like you put this up in the wrong neighborhood kind of message, and that to me is also interesting, so I mean that's all part of the exhibition, right? The conversation is happening whether we like it or not, and so yeah, I just feel like it's a great honor to have the sort of privilege to disrupt these spaces in that way.
So just to speak a little bit about 9/11. So I was in prison for 5 years during 9/11. Like, so I had got out like recently after that. And while I was in prison, I used to feel some type of way about the Muslim guards. Like they used to hide their Islam. And I was like, this the best thing I've ever had. Why would you hide it? So I kind of like shunned them. I didn't respect them as being Muslims. I was like, they're weak. Until I actually got out of prison. And I'm in the subway in Washington, D.C. And it's this big picture of bin Laden and signs everywhere. Like, if you see anybody that looks suspicious, and call the authorities. So I'm looking at this, and then I turn and they looking at me, and I'm like, yo, I feel super uncomfortable. It was like, I feel super uncomfortable. So I've had terrible experiences being Muslim, like just being at the Pentagon, and I'm writing a book, and the officers come and like, oh, what do you got? And they want to see what I'm writing. They think I'm writing down the numbers of the buses, like I'm about to try to do something. And I was getting like, I never felt that way in my life. Like, I was like, wow, now I understand why you have so many Muslims change their name. They don't want to claim Islam. The sisters, they tell them to take off their veil. They try to disassociate themselves with a threat, and they supposed to be the threat. So how are these people the threat when they're being threatened? So nobody fully understood what they was going through. And I've never been scared my whole life. Like, my mother died when I was 10, didn't know my father. I just grew up really rough around a bunch of bad people. So I don't fear nothing, but I was actually fearful in that moment, not more so for myself, but just for trying to do good. Because when I was standing on the corner selling drugs, running around with a gun, like, people they was glorifying me like John Gotti. They was ready to make a movie about me. But now that I'm praying, now that I'm humble, now that I'm stopping people from killing people, now that I'm intermediating between faction gangs, I'm a problem. And I couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand how I became the problem. Like, I know you may not know this, your viewers may not know this, but every major gang in Chicago started off with an Islamic foundation. Like GD was growth and development. Once those leaders, those men got pulled out of those organizations and locked up, those young men interpreted that to mean whatever they wanted to mean. Then they started killing each other. And when you get to jail, you see all of these men, they go to Juma. I couldn't figure that out. I was in Ashland, Kentucky, and all of the guys who were BDs, GDs, whatever they was claiming, they was in Juma. And I was like, how you come to Juma and then you leave and go be a part of a gang? Like, you don't have two lords. How can you worship two masters? Like, either you're fully about peace or you're fully being a gangster. But I didn't know that their leaders had incorporated Islam into their foundation to give it structure. And when they go back to jail, then all the violence stops and everybody's together. They the best of people. These guys are the best of people. So, just me being able to be in this image. I have family in Chicago. You should see how proud they are. They like, because Chicago has been the murder capital constantly, like nonstop. Like every day you can read about 230 people getting killed. Google it, check it, fact check it. This is happening every day. So to see this, it reminds them like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. This is how we're supposed to be acting. And it had a great impact. They was very proud of this. They was like, man, we appreciate you for standing on what's right. Because some people come out here and they get right back to business as usual. They're back into selling drugs. They're back into that wild lifestyle because that's all they know. This was the most positive thing for me. So I grabbed it and I held on to it. And no matter how much somebody tried to shake it from me, I held on to it. And I've been in a great space with everybody around me.
That's so powerful. Can we advance to the next slide, please, to Park Match? And I want to continue with a thread you were just describing, that you both actually were just describing, which is partly related to the spiritual, the meaning that, Islam for that you were just describing, Dawood, but also just spirituality more generally for anyone can really give purpose and meaning in life, in a moment of, in challenging times or in painful moments. And I think, this image is so sort of powerful because of actually what the video was describing about the chess match of life and of the chess match of decisions, of moves, and the weight, placed in each move, either metaphorical or literal. I'd love to hear about, the spirituality, the way that spirituality, is present in these images, is present, in your lives, and in the way you were just describing, Dawood, and sort of how, how really the in a way, one of the main takeaways of this exhibition, whether or not you're Muslim or of any other religion, really is about freedom and hope and about growth, following the paths of justice and of hopefulness that are ultimately in the work and are extremely optimistic.
So I believe that, I'm not sure if it's this picture or it may be Zor. Awol, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but on my Instagram, if you go to Kingdawud Burgess, you'll see the first day that image had 25,000 likes. So I think it's not about you being Muslim. I think it's about you being the best of yourself. People can respect that, because when I was a threat to the world, when I was running around high out of my mind with a gun on me, trying to sell somebody some drugs, like, I was a problem for everybody, indirectly or directly. So Awol didn't even know this, but the young man you see in front of me, he was in prison with me in Latuna, in Texas. And I used to always have to go to the lieutenant office and get him out of the hole, because he was taught that you have to be a certain way to be considered to be a man. So he was real wild, and he's still that way. And it's like, that's the old me. And nobody was there to grab me and say, hey, you're going to end up getting killed. Hey, you're going to end up going to jail for the rest of your life. It had to happen. I had to get almost killed. I had to go to jail almost for my whole life for me to realize that I don't want to be caught up in that. So just to speak to spirituality, like, I've been closer to Jews and Christians than I've been closer to some Muslims. And the reason why, some people just want to be, they just want to be sincere to whatever they believe in. They just want to be the best of themselves. Like I said, you have me on the other side. I'm the best of myself. I'm constantly challenging the worst of myself every day. Every day I'm looking at a woman like, wow, but do I pursue her? So you have people who deal with this every day. They dealing with this. They being challenged. They being presented with desires. Do you bite the apple or do you not? And go back to what I was saying about the Jews and the Christians. Like, you got great people in every walk of faith. And most of the people, like, especially when they're in jail, they come to one common ground. We all believe in God. We're not going to mix it up with the rest of the stuff. We all believe in a higher power. You're a good man. I'm a good man. I want to treat you fair. Treat me fair. I want respect. I'll give you respect. And they open up, the world opens up for you, because you know how powerful the Jewish people are. You know, a lot of the Islamic scholars quote from the Jewish people because they had known God before anybody. They was around before anybody. So how can you have the full truth without talking to them? Spain, the Muslims ruled Spain for 1,000 years. Most of their scholars were Jewish scholars. That's how they was preserving the knowledge. That's how they was furthering the knowledge. You can't just be Muslim and think that you have a complete picture. Allah tell you in the Quran, he say, be you Jew or be you Christian, worship your Lord and you will be guided. He also says that, you know, he don't see your body. Like, you can throw on a kufi or you throw on a yarmulke. That don't mean nothing. You can look the image, but what are you doing as a person? Are you good? Are you bad? Are you truthful? Are you a liar? People gravitate towards what's good because nobody really wants bad. And before I go too long, I just wanted to go back and comment on, he gave the exhibit of prison. I was in prison. I just did 13 years in a federal prison after doing 6 years. So in that image, you have, we dress, nobody's better than anybody. I was locked up with Raj Rajasthani. He was a billionaire. Bernie Madoff, billionaire. I could just keep going on. You had the who's who of American greed was sitting watching themselves on TV with me. So people were rich, people had power, people had prestige, but now you got on an orange jumpsuit. So I don't see none of that. I don't even know who you are until we turn on the TV and I see you on American greed. But with all of that said, I've seen how prison is so treacherous. People don't have hope. They lose their family. Nobody wants to wait 20 years on you. You don't have money no more, so why am I still here? They don't have nothing. And believe it or not, like, Islam stopped a lot of people from losing their lives. Like, people respected the fact, like, this guy used to be a killer. Now he's a good guy, and Islam made him that way. So whatever made you that way, we got to respect that. And that's why you have so many people becoming Muslim, because they trying to figure out, like, what is changing the worst of the worst? How is it changing? They want to investigate it.
Absolutely. I mean, Awol, do you have anything further to add to this? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that was such a brilliant, you know, bringing together and weaving together all of the various threads we've been addressing. I think this would probably be a good moment to open it up to audience questions in the last few minutes that we have for this talk. And just a reminder to anyone who's in the audience, feel free to chat in your questions. We have a number here that I'd love to pose. And this is really, if we maybe could advance to the next slide, which was going home. Oh, okay, that's fine. We can, whatever's easiest. Then I just want to sort of, one of the questions was, what has both of your experiences been like watching people interact with these works in public space? And maybe I would expand it to the sort of the idea of the fact that these, you know, works are, you know, installed at 350 locations throughout New York and Chicago. You know, what's it been like for you to share the works in that context as much as to see people in that way respond with the works?
Go ahead, Daud.
So once again, I want to thank you again, because this is a super humbling situation. Like, you have no idea. Like, I should have been dead. I should have been in prison for the rest of my life. This means too much to me. that somebody actually took the time to showcase my growth and my struggle. People who come from where I come from, they don't get that opportunity. They don't get that opportunity at all. So now I could be a hope for an entire generation of people. I could be a voice for an entire generation of people. And you have no idea. It's like an out of body experience. Like I see myself behind a wall, behind a fence, behind concrete walls. I've seen the worst of the worst. This is the best of the best to me. Like this means so much to me. I know my mother would be super proud. Like my family is so proud. The Muslim community is super proud. You have young Black men who never thought they could be nothing because that's what they was taught. And now they're seeing a different image out there. And it's like, now they want to talk to me. So my natural ability to be able to speak, I'm getting the chance to speak to them. Some of the books I've written, like I'm getting the chance to like have people check out my work. And I wrote 50 novels and my work doesn't get read because nobody knows who I am. I don't have a big name, but all of that is changing just due to the platform. And it's like, I can imagine if I would have died and nobody would have ever got to know who I was, but y'all changed that. So, you know, I tell Awol all the time, like, I'm super grateful for this. And he's like, no, you did all this. And I'm like, whether I did all this or not, like you played a huge part. And I can never thank the Public Art Fund enough. I can never thank you guys enough because you put the images out there to be seen. It could have still been an idea. It could have still been something in the talk that never happened.
That's all a testament to Awol. It absolutely is. I really believe that completely.
I'm only a vessel.
Well, we have a question as well about the relationship of Ramadan to this event and to this exhibition. You know, to have Ramadan happen right now. You know, while the exhibition's on view, while we're having this talk. Would love to hear your thoughts on how tonight's event and the ideas that we're engaging with here and in the exhibition are related to the learnings from Ramadan as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming up, I mean, we only have a few nights left. And, I just feel like, personally for me, Ramadan is kind of month of recentering, on all aspects of life. And it's something that I now look forward to every year. I just hope that when people are fasting and when they come across these images, that they maybe see themselves in it, right? Like maybe they see a reflection, or maybe they see a certain kind of acceptance, especially in New York, especially in Chicago, that maybe they didn't see in those sort of advertising spaces, right? And that's what I meant about earlier about these sort of accidental readings is, is this an ad? Is this trying to sell me something? And it's not, right? Like it's not, there's no watch, there's no, bag, there's no model selling it. It's just what you see. And so, yeah, I just hope that that conversation continues in these neighborhoods.
Wonderful. So it's 6 o'clock. We got a question that was asking if there was a location list for the works in the exhibition. And I can tell you, and I can tell it's a great prompt to tell all of our audience that on the Public Art Fund website, which is publicartfund.org, we have the exhibition page for Awol Erizku, New Visions for Iris, that has the map of these 13 works installed. It shows everywhere that they're installed throughout New York City's 5 boroughs and throughout the entirety of Chicago, where you can see all of the great images that Awol's made, and especially those featuring Dawood throughout New York City. And they're just such powerful, meaningful images, that there's sometimes still left to see the exhibition. The exhibition is on view through, blanking on the date, but
June 20th.
Exactly, sorry, so many dates. But it's really great that it's been up since February 24th, and it'll be up through June 20th. I'd encourage you to go see the works, to go spend more time, to go read more about Awol's work and see his other materials that are available online and with his galleries, and especially to check out more of Dawood's books and music and all of the great work he's doing. And Awol, Dawood, I'm so grateful to you both for taking the time tonight to talk about this really important collaboration, to talk about this historic show. And I have to say, I'm especially grateful that you've been participating in this talk during the final days of Ramadan, as we were just describing. So I wish you both a Ramadan Mubarak, and say thank you so much, and congratulations to you both, and thank you for everything. Awol, Dawood, I'll let you have the final word before we end tonight.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again, Daniel. Thank you to Laura Sparks, the whole team at the Cooper Union, of course, Public Art Front, and all, everyone that's been very, very supportive of this exhibition. And especially Dawood for sort of trusting my vision, right? So thank you.
I just want to say, and this is not me trying to promote a book or anything. If I could give everybody in the world one of my books for free, I would. A lot of people actually died and got incarcerated for me to be able to write these books. I didn't write them from just thinking. I actually had to experience this. And you will see 13 years of me. I spent 9 years of that in 24-hour lockdown. You can't even imagine that. I would love for any of you to read the book, or if you can reach out to me, like if you DM me on Instagram, and you ask for the book, like if I have enough copies, I'll give you the book for free, because I believe in the artwork. I believe that, writing is something that mankind have done from the beginning of time to communicate with each other. It's a lot of beautiful things, these books, and I would love for you to go on that journey, just so you can have a different aspect of life.
Thank you, Awol. Thank you, Dawood, and thank you to Cooper Union for hosting tonight. Talk soon.